Welcome to Blind City. I had to lose my sight to find my vision.
Are you blind? Are you blind? Open your eyes. They lying every time, so I don't trust men, only trust God. I had to lose my sight before I could see the light.
Welcome to Blind City. See, Blind City is a condition. Crime, racism, and poverty. We have to put the word neighbor back into hood. I had over 31 surgeries and lost my sight in fight to glaucoma. I tried killing myself 3 times in one day, and I was unsuccessful. And then I heard a voice tell me, use your weakness as a strength to inspire and create awareness through Blind City, the podcast. I will address the issues that are plaguing our society, like poor education, that are turning our broken neighborhoods into the breeding grounds for prisons, bootleg preachers, crooked politicians that have my people dancing like strippers in the community. Let's talk about it, or we can flip tables like Jesus. Welcome to Blind City. This is Blind City, the podcast. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham. We are the therapy for these streets. And like I said before, the most dangerous man in the world is a blind man with a handgun. Welcome to Blind City, the podcast.com. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham. I had to lose my sight to find my vision. We are the therapy for these streets with Brother Juma. I have a special guest inside the city just rolled up. He's the grandson of a legend in this city. And I said it. He's a legend in this city, an activist. The Reverend Larry Rice grandson, Pastor Chris Aaron Rice. Welcome to the city.
Thank you. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here today. I'm looking forward to the conversation and really digging into what it means to experience homelessness on the streets of St. Louis.
Well, let's talk about it. Chris, let's talk about the homeless issue in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's really getting worse, not better. We've got all these resources in St. Louis, and yet still so many people fall through the cracks of that system. It seems like our politicians are really great at saying, hey, we're doing so much, but at the same time, the numbers of people who are experiencing brokenness and homelessness on the streets just continue to rise, just get higher and higher.
So how did it get to this point? I knew your grandfather had the building downtown and he was providing for the homeless. He had the TV station inside the building. He was providing hope. What happened?
Well, over the decades, I mean, really, this has been happening for years and years. We had people with large money interests buying up all of the properties downtown, and their philosophy, the way they look at life is to say, not in my backyard. This is a stain on my reputation and on the business that I'm trying to do. So the only way to solve that is to get rid of every single resource that's trying to really help people. And so that's kind of really how New Life closed down and other nonprofits around the area. The only way that they wanted you to get is if you got to be in my pocket or you're out, basically. We got to control how you do it or you're out.
And during that time, who was in office? Who was the mayor?
So we had Mayor Slay for a lot of that, and then Cruisin came in and really followed his agenda. In fact, she campaigned on the idea of closing down 1411 Locust, the last emergency shelter in the city of downtown St. Louis. So 1411 Locust was where New Life was at. We were housing over 300 people a day, and she got that shut down. That's what she campaigned on.
Brother Juma, what you think about this?
I think Chris is 100% spot on. He's absolutely 100% spot on. Shout out to his grandfather. His grandfather is truly a legend and served the community I don't know how many years. I'm just going to say countless years, and have provided so much life and support to a community that is very vulnerable and downtrodden. And his leadership has helped so many. So a big shout out to him. But Chris is spot on with everything that he's saying. When you look at things from a business standpoint, either you are a liability or you are an asset. The people in the downtown St. Louis area, the homelessness, they were considered a liability. So big corporations took the position that if you can't make money for us, you got to go. Plus, they were considered an eyesore. And so,
Mhm.
from a corporate standpoint and corporate position, uh, it, the homelessness just wasn't good for business, and so they had to move those people out by any means necessary. And so they put their goons on Larry Rice. They put their institutions worked to destroy what he had built. Although his institution, his building, and his business was there first and foremost, and the homeless people were there first and foremost. But people who wanted to put lofts and other corporations down there, they wanted that space and they wanted that area. And so they used their policies and their systems and their politicians to not erode, but erode the very foundation of those institutions, and they no longer exist. And they use that same model all over the country. They call it
Yeah.
gentrification. They
Right.
see a particular neighborhood or community they want that's going to be viable for business. So we put our goons on the poor people and the vulnerable, and we just strip them down to the point where they can no longer fight. They don't have the resources, they don't have the capital, they don't have the legal arm. And so eventually they fold and they take those communities. They do it all over America and they do it all the time.
Sounds very familiar, Pastor Chris, right? Sound like that's what they did to Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, in St. Louis, we've got a double whammy. Here, we've got a separation between St. Louis County and St. Louis City. County has always had this visceral reaction to any service trying to open up and serve the poor, the homeless in their own communities. Get out of my backyard. Go to the city. Go to the city. And so when the city starts turning around and saying, not my backyard, where do they have to go? It's like we treat dogs better than we do human beings. And these people, there's no safe place to go. And Jesus said, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And when he was doing ministry, he didn't have a home. He was going around, he was preaching the coming kingdom of God. And, we're seeing a lot of people who are experiencing such brokenness.
And
Speaking of dogs and cats, you absolutely right. They got dog and cats hotels, man. People leave out of town and put their dogs and cats in hotel, but you can't put the homeless
Right.
inside of a building.
Right. It's absolutely terrible the way that we treat and the way that we justify our treatment to the homeless. It's truly terrible.
Brother Juma?
well, the homeless don't make money. They don't make money for the city. And corporations drive economies and they drive communities throughout the United States. If you go to South Beach in Miami, very, very beautiful, lush area. But if you go about 3 blocks over, you see some homelessness like you've never seen before. If you go to New York, if you go to Los Angeles, you'll see thousands of people on Skid Row in Los Angeles, California. And, you think to yourself, oh my God, I thought that the United States and I thought places like LA and New York was the panacea of just goodness. And then you go a couple blocks over and you see homelessness like you've never seen before. So it's a real problem. It's a real, real problem. The homeless, they struggle with mental illness. They struggle with many different issues. And instead of them getting the personal and professional help they need, they're placed in jails, which makes the city rich, which make rural areas rich, which makes institutions rich. So it's a real diabolical system that have a number of different tentacles associated with it that work against the poor and the vulnerable. And the rich get richer and the poor get poor. So that's
right.
Long story short.
That's right. And you pointed out something there, and I want to make it very clear to all of the listeners, okay? The why people become homeless is not what's important. What's important is, what are you going to do about solving the root cause? Why, ultimately, why do people become homeless? We want to make it all these, well, they made bad decisions, they're doing drugs, or maybe a catastrophe happened to them, or. But how do you solve homelessness? Build relationships with them. Get to know them as a person. Surround them as a community and love them well. That's exactly what Jesus wanted us to do. That's exactly what New Life is trying to do. We're not trying to enable people in their homelessness by having a shelter. We want to give them a hand up, but we can't give them a hand up unless we know what their real root cause is, and often it's a heartbrokenness. So racism, crime, poverty, it's so complex. You can only start untangling that as you get to know them on a relational level and love them well.
Hey, Chris.
You're right, Pastor.
Hey.
You're right, Pastor Chris Rice. But let me say this. We speak on what Jesus has done. Mm-hmm. People go to church every Sunday. Easter Sunday. Church is now, Chris, seem like it's a propaganda, man.
Yeah.
They really don't understand what their position is in the community. They go to church and they go home, man, and they feed they cat and dog, but won't feed a homeless man on the street.
Yeah. And, that is exactly why the church is uniquely suited to address this issue, because when we read scripture, when we understand what the Bible is actually saying, it's not saying go to church every Sunday and check that off your list, or I tithe, that put 10% in the offering plate, or whatever. That's not what's going to make you more like Jesus. Go and be like Jesus by loving your neighbor as much as you love yourself. And let me tell you, there are a lot of people who need your mercy, which is exactly who your neighbor is.
If I could just veggie back on what he said.
Go ahead, Brother Juma.
Regardless of a person's religious persuasion, one of my mentors used to always say to me, and I just kind of adopted that position, and that is, I would rather see a sermon than to hear a sermon.
Mm-hmm.
People can make their mouths say anything. They can get up in front of a congregation, entertain that congregation, and really they haven't said anything meaningful, or they haven't said anything really substantive. And so I would rather see a sermon than hear a sermon any day.
Yes. And here's the key. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less, and you do that by serving other people. Okay?
Serving other people.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a lot of people serving these dogs and cats. They got pet stores. They got pet hotels. They got pet cemeteries. They got everything for the dogs and cats. And you can't get a homeless person a piece of bread. We'll be right back after these messages. It is ridiculous. BlindCityThePodcast.com. So what's going on with these relationships? Because look like we got situationships, not relationships in our community. Why are people making the wrong choices with who they sleep with?
I think it's
because that's where it starts.
That's exactly where it starts. I believe a lot of things in the Black community have become normal and accepted, and they're not seen as problematic as they used to be. Like, I'm sure when you and I were growing up, the expectation was for you to be married before you had children. That's not the expectation anymore. It's normal for people to have children and not be married, and people think that's okay. Well, it is okay, as a grown woman, if you have your own job, you can take care of the child, you have the means and the resources, you don't need anybody. That's all sounds fine and good. But at the end of the day, it takes two people to raise a child.
Please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City the Podcast.
BlindCityThePodcast.com. BlindCityThePodcast.com. We have Pastor Chris Aaron Rice inside the city, along with therapist Brother Juma, and we're addressing the issue in St. Louis dealing with the homeless. Lighter Cruisin.
Mm-hmm.
Let's flip tables like Jesus.
Lyda Cruisin operated pretty much as a puppet for Mayor Slay's agenda.
Facts.
And she campaigned on, we're going to clean up our downtown by getting rid of the last emergency shelter for the homeless. All of the others had been closed down or moved further and further away. And so this was the last low barrier shelter for men and women experiencing homelessness. We housed anywhere between 250 and 300 people a night. It was a huge service that eventually she got closed down. And she did a big disservice. And I think everybody can actually, they just look, okay, before 2016, what was the situation of homelessness in downtown? And then after 1411 was closed, what did it look like? I mean, crime rose. More people were experiencing homelessness. There were now more people who were sleeping in front of those businesses than ever before. So their philosophy of not in my backyard, you're the reason that homelessness exists, it just doesn't pan out. It doesn't work.
Brother Juma, what you think? Lyda Cruisin.
Well, typical politician. Say one thing and do another. They come around when they need a vote, and they have very short memories. And as Chris said, they serve the best interests of the corporations, who oftentimes do fund their campaigns. But they have an allegiance and a loyalty to the power brokers and not to the people. And so, like I said previously, the homelessness, they represent a liability. And that's why they had to close 1411. What Chris' grandfather did was just unprecedented. And he fought a good fight. He did all that he could. They gave that man hell on every level. He couldn't really focus on the community and the people that he was serving because he spent so much time fighting the powers that be, because they wanted that space. They wanted that area, that land mass where the building was located. And so, it's very difficult to fight the power structure and win because most people don't have the resources. So that's what you're dealing with.
Pastor Chris, let me ask you a question. Why we don't see a lot of homeless in Chesterfield, West County? Mm-hmm. The further you go outside St. Louis, you see less homelessness. But the deeper you go into St. Louis, you start seeing it. What's the difference?
I'll tell you why. They're there. There are homeless people in Chesterfield. They might be living in a hotel or a motel, pay by pay, week by week. They may be living in their car. They may be crashing at a friend's place, but they're still homeless. They don't have property. They're not experiencing chronic homelessness as in the same way in downtown St. Louis, but it's because there are no resources for people who have fallen on hard times or who have made some poor decisions. There are no resources to help pick them back up. So the only place they have to go is downtown St. Louis. And the reason that's very purposeful. Okay, all of the businesses in South County and West County, all the way in St. Charles, all of these different counties are purposefully pushing people towards the city. It's not my backyard mentality, and it does boil down to the profit. But
So are you telling me the St. Louis city is the dumping grounds?
Absolutely. Yeah. When 1411 was open, we would consistently have cops from the county drive their homeless people all the way down to 1411, drop them off on the door. We'd have hospitals out in the county who, if they found out you didn't have a home, they would patch you up just to the point where you're barely alive and then drive you down all the way down to 1411 and dump you off. And now that shelter's not open, they don't have a place to go. They just say, get out. They don't have a place to dump human beings who deserve dignity, respect, empathy, help, care. That's the thing is, when I'm getting to know you, I don't care why you're there. I'm going to love you to the best of my ability. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to treat you like you're a human being. I'm going to look at you like you deserve respect. I'm going to get to know your story as you tell it. And then I'm going to try my best to fill your needs, not just your physical ones, but the companionship that we all desire. And I'm going to do my best to help you in that way.
Let me say this before we go to break. Pastor Chris Rice, do you have anywhere that you do worship?
Yeah, right now we are, I preach every other week. We have our own TV station, 24.2. You can also find them online. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a place where people can come?
Yep. So it's CA Rice, or it's carministries.com, or you can go to newlifeevangelisticcenter.com or nlecstl.com, and you'll be able to find my ministry.
Let me say this to my listening audience. I don't know what church some of y'all going to, because we got a whole lot of them throughout the city. And you know how I feel. This man is doing the real work of Jesus. The others are just talking. You need to leave up out that church and come see this man. He's in the streets. One nation under God. One nation under fraud. BlindCityThePodcast.com.
Langford Cunningham is really an inspiration.
Mr. Langford Cunningham.
Blind City, the podcast. It's headed up by a guy named Langford Cunningham. He had to lose his sight to find his vision.
Welcome to Blind City, the podcast. I'm your host, Langford Cunningham. We are the therapy for these streets.
Everybody got their ops, everybody got their enemies, but for real, now you don't even got to worry about your enemy. It be, the closest around you.
No, this is real. We getting shot by police. We getting stereotyped.
We didn't get a proper investigation. Well, definitely, I think it's a bunch of
Your car got shot up, right?
Yeah, he dropped the bullet.
Yeah, you from the hood.
They just passed a law where you can give a kid a gun without the parents' permission.
Wait a minute, they can do what? We got people in power that's not really for the people. They think the people work for them. You work for the people.
We got to talk about the disparities in our community.
Check out Blind City, the podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or go to blindcitythepodcast.com. blindcitythepodcast.com. Have Pastor Chris Rice inside the city along with Brother Ajuma. Brother Ajuma, any final words?
To God be the glory. I would rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. I would like for Chris to provide whatever information that he would like the community to get involved in. Be the best version of yourself by going out, making a difference in somebody's life. And I just thank you for the opportunity to be here and to serve and to get this information. And I'm looking to see how I can play a greater role in what needs to be done to help offset this homelessness and some of the other issues that we as a community struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about what is the problem? What can we really do to even empathize with people on a deeper level? And we've got a really special event coming up, not this Friday, but next Friday, October 22nd, from 8 p.m. all the way to 8 a.m. the next day. So it's Night with a Homeless. We are inviting you to intentionally make yourself uncomfortable, to learn what it's like to experience homelessness. So many people are sleeping on concrete. They're sleeping under dumpsters. They're sleeping under bridges, on benches if they can. So many places. But, we want you to intentionally make yourself uncomfortable for one night. Join us on Facebook Live as we are downtown St. Louis ministering physically to the needs. If you want to join us, you can come downtown and join us as we pass out food, as we help people. But we know that can be a scary thing for some. We still want you to get involved, to spend the night. So set up your sleeping bag on the floor, go in your backyard, anywhere, get your church involved. The point is that we're sleeping in solidarity. Okay, so to sign up for this in particular event, Night with the Homeless, go to nwh.nlecstl.com. And, you can sign up there. Registration is $30. That will get you a shirt that talks about the event, a wristband, but you'll also know that you're coming as a community to learn more about how to empathize for the homeless.
Pastor Chris Rice, let me ask you a question. I know Corey Bush has been an advocate for homeless.
Right.
Has she reached out to you?
We've sent her multiple different letters trying to figure out what's going on really with why every single time we try to apply to use an empty federal building to serve the homeless, we get denied. So we've been reaching out to her. She has not gotten a hold of us. Corey Bush has supported New Life in the past. She was there when we shut down, but she's under fire a lot right now. And so we're trying to work alongside her. I think that we're trying to get a petition going, figuring out how we can work alongside Corey Bush.
That's good. That's good. So I hope the people are listening out there. The only way we can make a change unless we change ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it starts with us. It starts with recognizing that we are very privileged to have a roof over our head. We're privileged to have a car or to be able to transport ourselves to work. We're privileged to have clothes, to look good, to go to work and stuff like that. Food. There's such food insecurity for so many families throughout America. And so for one of the wealthiest countries in the entire world, we got to take a deep inner look at ourselves and say, enough's enough. I'm going to be part of the change. I'm not going to wait for my government to try and make laws and incentivize me to go and be a good person. I'm going to do it because I know it's the right thing to do. And there are lots of ways to help.
Well, thank you, Pastor Chris Rice, for rolling up to the city. If there's anything we can do at Blind City, the podcast in the future, you have my number. Mm-hmm. And this platform is welcome to you at any time, brother.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's truly been an honor and a privilege to share something that I'm very passionate about. I'm the third generation Rice who's at this work. We've been doing this for almost 50 years now. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this next year, and I'm excited to carry the ministry 50 more years beyond that. So thank you so much for giving me a voice.
And you let your granddaddy know you bringing a blind man to the party this time, Pastor Chris Rice. We not playing out here. You know how much money these people spend on dog food and cat food?
It's crazy.
And you can't spend $1 to feed the homeless? Ridiculous. BlindCityThePodcast.com.
If you found this content helpful, please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Blind City the Podcast. You can find us on all social media platforms.
BlindCityThePodcast.com.